In Western tradition, we don't have a lot of, certainly, obviously, there's no Christian texts which are older. There are no Muslim texts that are older. These texts of the Jewish Bible are the oldest of those three traditions. Obviously, Eastern religions are older because, guess what? India, China have traditions that go back. We have, obviously, texts, the older texts that exist, or texts that exist from this period. When was the Odyssey from? What, Harold? What do we do?
It was probably composed. It's about the time it's about is 1100 BCE. It was probably composed orally 600, 500, and then written down 500, 400.
So kind of it's roughly in the same period, what we think of as the foundational texts of the Western canon, like the Odyssey. It's not exactly the same, but roughly we're talking about very ancient texts. The Western world doesn't have a lot older than that. Why don't we have a lot older than that? Well, for a couple of reasons. The most obvious is the printing press did not exist for a long time after this. And it wasn't until the printing press existed that a lot of books could exist, right? Because how do you actually even create them? That's one problem. The second problem is even the things that were written then were traditionally, typically written on parchment, which, guess what? Disappears. It doesn't last. The only things that typically last from such an ancient time are things that are written in stone. And that's why we have very important archaeological data of literature when it's written in stone, because the stone has a better chance of just lasting, just kind of being able to be handed down. So in the class, we have studied at different times. Some of the very important are called stela, which means stone, that are big rocks that are found with writings on them. And from that, we learn a lot from the period. Honestly, very few have been found. It's not like there's an enormous amount of data that can help us understand the historical period the Psalms are from. There's some. And that's why hieroglyphics in Egypt are so important, but they were typically written, the ones that were written on walls of pyramids, they've lasted. And so stone and things that are written on, and that's why pottery is so important to date anything, because pottery tends to last, even the shards, even if it's a broken piece of pottery. Archaeologists can tell you a lot of what we know about Greek and Roman times is really from pottery that's found and how we understand how sophisticated. There is no museum, honestly, better in the world than the Metropolitan Museum of Art to appreciate this. And we keep talking about when we can do this. Won't it be great to do some field trips together? Because you go to the Met, you can really appreciate. Here in New York City, we have amazing artifacts from the ancient world. Okay, and then we also in the Psalms class talked about the politics of that these things taken from the colonial time into Britain and France, out of Egypt and Syria and Lebanon. There's some controversy, obviously, the Elgin marbles in the British Museum. But the whole point is, why is pottery such an important part of any art museum that's looking at ancient life? It's because shards typically can last. And from them, sometimes we find writing on them, but also just how they were created tells us a lot about the technology of the time. How sophisticated and how, I don't want to use the word primitive, that's out of how not sophisticated. It's very simple. And you can see that in very different cultures, and it's how they date. All right, let me stop because we're about to start class, but maybe I need to keep doing this too. How was that? I didn't look at comments or questions. So that was let's see, Harold, do you want to say, is there any?
That was great. There were a lot of how old are the other religions, et cetera, but I think that people were basically focusing on you. Shep does ask, why do the Psalms never refer to themselves as Tehillim? It's Mizmor, Shir, but not Tehillim.
So that's a big discussion about what is the name of the word for, why do we call them Psalms? And that really goes to a whole subject, which we've also discussed in this class, and maybe we'll have to have Harold do a little, is that the reason we have access to a lot of the books of the Bible is because of their translations into the Greek and then Latin. And the Greek, the reason the Greek is so important is because when it was translated into Greek, it was closer to a time that this language of Hebrew, ancient Hebrew and ancient Aramaic were actually spoken. So the Greek calls it the psalm, what's it called, Harold? I'm not a Greek person.
Psalmoi, which is
Yeah.
songs to musical accompaniment.
Right. So the word psalm itself is from the Greek, which indicates musical accompaniment, which is one of the reasons we understand that these texts were originally sung or somehow, or there was music with them. And they're not just poems, although they are indeed poems. The word for psalm in Hebrew is mizmor, or a song, or tehillim, which is the Sefer Tehillim, is a psalm of praise.
So with that, given how many
You are
offerings
right.
we have today,
Yes.
I think that Cantor Nimi is going to start us off. Cantor Nimi, you are with us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Okay, and you're going to be doing Or Zarua. I found a text that I can share. Okay, is that correct?
Great.
Is that what you decided to do, Cantor?
Yeah, I thought that we would do the Gezerah Shava today, and
Okay.
that I would save the reprise of my original piece for
So
Monday.
tell us why you chose Or Zarua.
So this is from a later psalm, from Psalm 97, but it has a phrase in it that is also in our current psalm. Actually, I think in the first verse, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the second verse, Yishrei Lev. The straight of heart, or the upright of heart, or the
Verse 2.
right-hearted.
It's in verse 2, yep.
Verse 2. And so it's always can be illuminating to see how a phrase lives in another context. And that was not an intended pun, actually, but illuminated. It's light is sown for the righteous.
And by the way, we sing this very dramatically before chanting Kol Nidre. This verse we sing.
Indeed, and it's also part of the Friday evening liturgy, too, in the Psalms that precede Lecha Dodi. And so one of the other reasons I picked it is because it's much, much later in the Psalm, so it's going to take us a long time to get to Psalm 97. So if I do this again, whenever, B'ezrat Hashem, we get to Psalm 97, there will have been enough time in between. But I'm going to sing a little bit of the English. This is a setting by Dan Nichols. The English, though, was actually written by campers at Golden Union Camp, sometimes called Gucci. Golden Union Camp Institute. And so this idea of hope for the future, light being sown for the righteous, and what is upon us to do to be among the righteous for whom light would be sown. Zaru ala tzadik uleishrei lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik uleishrei lev simcha. We must keep our hopes alive. We must raise our voices high. We must hold each other tight. We must stand up in the night and be alive.
Wow, that's beautiful. I've never heard that. CBSE uses a bunch of Dan Nichols stuff, so CBSE members will be familiar with him, but I've never heard that. Beautiful. Thank you, Cantor. And Cantor said in the chat, and it's correct, which I meant to say, Tehillah is used inside the Psalms. It's not that it's never used. It's just, it's not as common the interesting thing is that we don't translate Sefer Tehillim. We call them Psalms in English. We don't call them songs, words of praise, the way the exact translation. And I just want to say a word about next week, and Harold will send out an email later today or tomorrow about this. I'm due to go to I go to Provincetown every year after the holidays for a break, for a little bit of the autumn time. And I'm really not sure I'll be able to have internet where I'm staying. Typically, it's very bad. So Harold and I are working on a plan for next week. And we still have a lot of Psalm 11s to do. So we're going to try and figure out if we'll continue. If I can't get on next week, if we'll move on. Maybe what we'll do is move on to Psalm 12 and then wait till I come back the week after to do more of the personal ones. But we're going to work that out and let everybody know later, okay? So hang in there, everybody. Don't panic.
We're not panicking.
Excellent.
Compared with the election,
exactly.
We're sharing Psalm 11 is
exactly. We'll figure it out. And also, I'm trying to work out to go to Los Angeles for most of November so I could go into quarantine for 2 weeks so that I could actually hold my grandchildren who I haven't been able to see since February. And I have a new one who was born in February I've only seen once. So my goal is I'm going to rent an Airbnb and try and be in quarantine for 2 weeks so that I could do that. While I'm in quarantine, I will continue doing the Psalms class at 7 a.m. California time, which is not easy for me, but that's how much I love all of you. And then when I'm out of quarantine, either Rabbi Rapport or Rabbi Moskowitz will teach, we'll figure it out, but I know you'll all let me have that little bit of family time.
You deserve a break too.
Okay, we'll keep you posted on as we work out all the details. All right.
Saying that Ginny Hennenberg was not able to join us, Ginny Hennenberg, look who showed up today.
Yay, so Ginny, we love Ginny.
Ginny, would you like to take it away?
Sure, I'm a little hoarse, so excuse me. I call this a vision. The subway has a secret car that only has one stop, Peace. When I exited at Peace, I was in New Orleans at Mardi Gras. People were laughing, eating, making music, and making love. I soon learned that not everyone was allowed to live in peace, but there were some greats. I heard John Lennon's song from one honky-tonk and Janis Joplin's from another. There was a raucous office meeting with Martin Luther King, Eleanor Roosevelt, John Kennedy, and Dwight Eisenhower. In another glance, I saw Mother Teresa handing out cotton candy and Gandhi hawking his lemonade. And in an arcade, Jonas Salk and Madame Curie were offering me a turn, throwing darts at inflated balloons. There was no end to the people I saw and recognized, and I began to understand about peace. All of these people from different places and different races and different faiths, providing fun for me. I felt safe. Suddenly there was silence. A work crew with an extension ladder approached. They were adding a street sign. Everyone gathered around, watching as it was unveiled. I strained my neck to see over the crowd. It said justice, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea, and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg appeared. She headed to a diner that she now runs, called Resistance. Everyone returned to their good intentions in peace, and it was time for me to leave. I made my way back to the hidden subway car. On my route, a homeless man, head down, resting against his chest, body leaning to one side, murmured that I may not be able to visit Peace again. I wondered who this man was. He looked so disheveled. What was he doing in such a lovely neighborhood as Peace? Why, I asked him, excuse me, doubting he knew what he was talking about. He raised his head and looked at me. His eyes sparkled, one shaped like a star, the other a crescent moon. Because peace is being demolished, the door to peace is closing, and you must work for justice and resistance so the door doesn't permanently lock. Take a good look around. Take it all in. Remember what you are fighting for. He ended with, I hope to see you again here in peace. Carry it in your heart. And then in a moment of brilliant sunlight, he disappeared. In his place was a tallis with a note. Wear this, it will protect you. I lifted his gift and draped it over my shoulders. The subway appeared. The doors slid open and I boarded. As the train left Peace, all that is good vanished, and I wondered if I would ever see it again.
Wow, Ginny, this is so powerful. Would you talk to us a little bit about writing it?
Yes, I heard Psalm 11. I had said this in a little bit on Facebook, is a call to action.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in the Psalm, God had a very specific plan for evildoers, fire and brimstone. So the question of what would you do when the foundation crumbles seemed to me to being asked of the righteous. And the fleeing to the mountains like birds was sort of a command to me to, open your eyes, go look at see, understand what goodness and righteous looks like. And a lot of the imagery that came together was from the psalm itself, and also coupled with RBG lying in state, and as I said,
Yeah.
you, the talus over your head, as the sounding of the shofar, all felt like calls to action for the righteous to act.
Beautiful. It's so powerful. This is a fantastic example of taking something, a feeling that the psalm invoked, and not going towards the language of the psalm, but just kind of expressing the feeling that the psalm invoked in you. And it is so powerful. And I think we can all relate to both the content and the power of it. It's very powerful, Ginny.
Thank
Very,
you.
very moving.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
So now
you.
let's see where we left off. Lori, we read Jeremy, Ari, Ben. Ben, did we read you last week? Are we up to Ben? Ben Shafran?
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, great.
A portrait of God. In his image, he created him with nostrils flaring in anger, anger easily aroused, sitting or standing or marching, hands raised to smite or elevate, and periodic regrets. In his own likeness, he created him in the beginning, with head, eyes, hands, feet, fluttering eyelids, and genitalia, of stone, wood, metal, toward of terrifying, impenetrable nature. And then when he matured, he relegated him to the transcendence, out of eyesight and into the imagination, where in the human soul, all godly attributes abide in his image.
Very beautiful, Ben. Would you talk to us? And I love I love the superscription here, a short history of God.
The title, A Portrait of God, came out of the one word, afapaim, his eyelids. Suggested that if God has eyelids, then we can paint a portrait of him. But to explain what I really want, I have to go back to early summer when we were doing Psalm 10 with Rabbi Rapport, and Cantor Nimi introduced a musical piece that was based on words that appeared in both Psalm 9 and Psalm 10, Be'et Sarah, in times of trouble. And in Psalm 9, it refers to the fact that God is a fortress for the believers and good doers in time of trouble. But in Psalm 10, which is in verse 1, it refers to God being absent and hiding himself in times of trouble. And when we were doing it, the first thought that I had was, indeed, where was he during the Holocaust? So what I wrote was a direct challenge to God. How dare you hide yourself? And the last few lines of what I wrote, we never went to Psalm 10 that I posted it on the Facebook page, but the last few lines were questions. And the questions were, who are you, Lord? Where are you, Lord? What are you, Lord? What shall we, mere humans, make of you in your distant vestments? And what I wrote for Psalm 11 is actually, after the whole summer, my answer to those questions.
Beautiful. Wow.
That really, there is no someone out there who causes good and evil. It's us. We have all the godly attributes, and by a corollary, we also have all the evil attributes. So it's us human beings who cause goodness and cause evil.
That is really powerful, and I love the way it speaks back and forth between the Psalms for you. That it's an ongoing dialogue, but I love this. And then when matured, he relegated him to the transcendence, out of eyesight and into the imagination, where in the human soul all godly attributes dwell in his image. B'Tselmo. Really fantastic, Ben.
Thank you.
I can't get over how deep these are. So fantastic.
Sarah Siegel.
And I hope this is the new version. Can you just scroll down real quick so I can see? Oops, stop. Thanks.
If you have a different region, just read what you have, and we'll
yes,
understand.
sorry. Give me a sec to go get it. Sorry.
All right, so should we go to?
Yeah, thanks.
Do you have it, Sarah, or should I wait?
In moments,
Okay. So
go ahead.
is Scott Soloway here today? I think he isn't, but is Jeremy here? So Scott Soloway is not able to be here, but while Sarah's finding hers, I will share Scott's because he wanted us to hear it. Confide in Hashem, no need to flutter like a bird around a mountaintop. In the darkness, the evil takes shots at those of just heart. When the foundations are ruined, what does the Tzaddik create? Hashem in a palace in the sky sits looking at humanity. Hashem is testing the Tzaddik, revolted by the lover of violence and injustice, raining down choking dust that fills cups of the unjust with raging heat. When the foundations are destroyed, what is the work of the Tzaddik? Hashem loves the acts of tzedakah of the Tzaddik, face beaming toward the just.
Beautiful, and a very interesting use of using the Hebrew word tzaddik, so you feel that you hear that repetitiousness that is so profound, and I liked very much keeping that. Beautiful, but Scott's not here, right?
Scott's not here.
Okay.
So we, having played for time, Sarah, are you ready? Sarah Siegel, okay.
Okay, here goes. All right, and this is in my mother's voice. My mother speaking. To Benny Goodman, the leader of the band, for and by David's daughter, Edith. God, I wish I could fly back to Mont Tremblant and be with Red Levy, my teenage crush, before I was crushed under the weight of my adult life. My childhood life weighed on me too. Daily before school, my mother told me, "You're shit and everyone knows it." As an adult, I became a target for ingrates. They tore me down for my visionary volunteering. I was affronted and walked away a pariah. Only dreams of red or God could keep me up. God got it. God saw my interpersonal trials. God also saw humanity's kids, including mine. God saw my exhaustion and despair at their unceasing needs. God saw how I wasn't prepared to bear a third child at 40, no less. Still, God gave me these trials, these kids, and faulty help, low money, slim sanity. Soll sein Schah, matter mi nicht, geh weg. Be quiet, don't bother me, go away. God, please serve sizzling cups of bile to the nonprofit ingrates and stop my volatility whenever I'm woken from tortured sleep by my kids who can't keep quiet. God, I know how you love right actions, and you know how I've tried. Please be divine, Red, rescue me after all.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, my God. Talk to us.
Well, Rabbi Kleinbaum, I remember last time my my psalm talked about, you know, my mother this and my mother that. And at the very end, you said parenthetically or softly or compassionately, well, you know, we don't know how your mom was feeling. And I remember it wasn't the time to have a dialogue about that, but I wanted to say, oh, honey, and don't mind me calling you oh, honey, but I would say, oh, honey, I knew every single thought my mother had because we were her confidants, you know, inappropriately, and I knew everything, you know, and so anyway, but then I thought about it more, and I was like, and Rabbi Kleinbaum's right. I'm doing this next one in her voice because she did have struggles and deserved, and who knows, this may be an ongoing thing, but I really was incredibly helped by it as usual. So thank you, Rabbi Kleinbaum, for that inspiration.
It's so profound to come to a point where, or to be able to express in a voice the very source of your deepest pain. That's very, very profound, really profound. And it goes back to that we end up carrying whatever our parents give to us.
You know what, and just one last thing too, when we ran out of time and I said, oh, I'll put it in the chat. My mom's dad had a 6th grade education and grew up in an orphanage because his mother was too poor to have it, you know, keep him, and his brothers and sisters after their father died. So like it is generational. And I commented that, Elle talked about her parents, you know, having survived the Holocaust. It's the same, it's not the same thing at all, but it's the same idea.
Yeah, trauma. It's how trauma gets passed on. And and we imagine that parents are able to overcome their personal trauma when it comes to their children, but they can't.
Thanks.
Wow. So the best we can become is somewhat compassionate, even while we acknowledge how broken it's made us. To carry both at the same time is really deep, deep place of spiritual depth. Thank you, Sarah.
Right. So, Stephen Deem, the Fagala poem. Is Stephen here today? I just can't see everybody. Stephen? We'll go back to that.
I'm here.
Okay, Stephen, great. Here you go. Take it away.
I have a different version. Here we go.
Okay.
Fagala, a meditation on Psalm 11, an odd number. Fly away, little bird with ruffled feathers, to the end of the rainbow where the leprechauns and the fairies play. Sticks and stones break bones, fling words designed to pierce the heart, crush spirit, and eliminate hope. Go to the hills, little Fagala, queer pansy fag, faggot, puñeta, maricon, Fagala, cocksucker. The taste of burning flesh. You know who you are, but in contrast, oh, my beautiful Fagala, perching proud high above the noise. Your erect feathers reflect the rainbow. You know who you are. Fly me to the hills, escape slings, arrows, shadows. Let me jump on your feather bed, become gravity free. And have a bird's eye view. Take me, pierce my heart with your flame, fill my cup with your glow. Let me ride on your back, fly me, glide me on cumulus clouds, surfing the wild winds of the Gulf Stream. Oh, my beautiful Fagala divine, I know who you are.
Wow, beautiful, Stephen. Talk to us about that. Fantastic.
Great. Well, you know, it came immediately. First line. When I saw Little Bird, Zippor, I immediately went Fagala. And I knew I was going to write about it. I didn't write it because it was just too easy. And I wrote another poem that was inspired by Harold when he mentioned we're not having class on
Indigenous Peoples Day?
So I wrote a poem called Indigenous Peoples Day, which I really like even more that I'd love to talk about, but at some other time. But anyway, Fegele became so powerful, particularly when the other Fegele poem, which was an homage to the Mama, which was wonderful, came up. Rabbi Kleinbaum, you started talking about Fegele's and explaining to everybody, all the men and women, what Fegele meant, and I'm thinking, me, let me talk. You gotta hear from a real one. But time went on, and I was screaming at Harold, please let me read this. So, basically what I'm trying to do is reframe the word. And it didn't work, because the next day after our discussion, I was in a rage. So I just realized it wasn't clever of me to get little bird. It was very deep and it was very profound. And Fegele is the F word, and it is the N word, and it's a word used to dehumanize people, to shut off their voice, before they even know what their sexuality is. So Fegele is a word that's used for any sort of boy, male, who does not conform to what the standards are for masculinity.
Correct.
So I really want to dedicate this poem to all the kids, all the little boys and girls, in another context, because this is a man thing. We got to acknowledge this. To the kids that didn't get chosen on the team because they couldn't throw a ball.
Well, I think in our society, masculine tomboys are treated better than effeminate boys. I think that girls who are, and I was definitely a tomboy, there's more room even in the 60s for girls to be, on the masculine end than there is room for boys to be on the feminine end. So I don't think you're wrong in that. And I think the word Fegele, it is about the fear of masculinity not being correct.
Exactly.
And so anything that's outside of what is correct for masculinity is a serious problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what came up. And
So this is beautiful, really powerful. And that's exactly what the Psalm should be doing. There can be one point in that you find your way in. And I think, and I'm just very moved, the class is showing there are all different ways that they're either taking the whole Psalm or taking one point in, and then it brings out something deep. And that's perfect, absolutely perfect. Any of those ways is absolutely correct. Thank you, Stephen, for that.
Thank you, Rabbi Kleinbaum, and everyone else.
Okay, Randy Axelrod, we are up to you. Randy, I know you're here. I see you. Randy, can you read? Can you unmute yourself? All right. Sherry is not here and asked to, they're up in Storm King, actually, looking at the foliage. Judy Frank, can you unmute yourself? Do we see Judy? Is Judy here?
We're having a hard time finding people today.
Randy Axelrod, Judy Frank, please identify yourselves. Please make yourselves known. All right.
Yeah,
So,
I unmuted.
okay. Okay, Judy, it's all you. Go ahead.
Adonai. They say the first 3 years of a child's life is the foundation of the whole child. I trust that you look down on us. You see children in cages at the border. Leonard Cohen says there is a hole in everything which lets the light in. But I think the hole in each child's psyche, being held in separation, is the evil terrorizing the innocents. I pray you will rain sulfur and hurricanes upon the people behind this justice, and bring your justice ever, even testing the righteous everywhere where this injustice exists. I wanted to add afterwards, like, God, when will this end? I was thinking about the foundation, what meant. And then it occurred to me, I'm very obsessed with how upset I am about these children still being held in cages in separation. And I don't believe God will rain sulfur and hurricanes, because God hasn't. I mean, during the Holocaust, all those children died, and relative told the story for Shoah about the archives from Steven Spielberg about having witnessed in Westerbork, the transport camp, train loads of children and mother came to the camp, and the Nazis spent hours having the mothers get off the train and leaving their children behind. And he said that after all these hours, all the women got off the train. And when they finally did, the train with the children slowly left the station. And he gave his testament how he has never forgotten the wailing and the sounds the women made when they realized their children were going off without them. And this was very haunting, you know, to hear it.
It's very haunting.
It affected him the rest of his life. He could still hear the sounds of those women. So I don't believe that God will rain sulfur and hurricanes upon evil people. And it still goes on. That's my frustration, because I was thinking about that all day, and I said I had to write it from this point of view.
Very powerful. And I want to say, rage at God is a traditional Jewish expression. Don't hold back. God deserves rage, given what we've seen in the world. This is not about saying we don't feel that rage there also. And you really capture this, that also those of us are kind of liberal modern people. We can't imagine saying, oh, we want our enemies to have rain and sulfur and hurricanes. But yeah, wow, when you think about what you're describing as evil, not just you can really feel that the level of anger and desire for revenge and for justice. So this is a very authentic and deep prayer. And I think looking at the foundation of this the issue of the first 3 years and foundation of a human being as opposed to of the world, I love very, very much. And connecting the whole of Leonard Cohen's whole to the whole in each child's psyche, really powerful.
I actually did a video with several mental health professionals about those first 3 years of life and how this is changing these children's perception of the world for the rest of their lives.
You know, we have a congregant whose grandfather invested his fortune in the whole issue of the study of the first 3 years in the 60s and is responsible for even that concept. Before the 60s, nobody thought about the first 3 years as being so important. And he is individually responsible. Isn't that crazy? For making our understanding, for nobody thought about studying that age.
Rabbi, who is this?
Nancy Meyer's grandfather.
Huh.
Whose name I've just escapes me, but his name is in the Yale Early Childhood Center, because he funded the research at Yale and in other places. He's from Chicago, and he made his fortune early, and then he loved children, and he dedicated his entire fortune to the study of 0 to 3. And as a result of those studies, that's how we know all of this. He was always convinced, he personally felt that he wasn't a doctor. He just felt this was the area that had been completely neglected because people thought, oh, they can't talk, they can't, you know. His name now escapes me, Harold. I'll look it up and I'll let you know. But
Okay.
It's Nancy Meyer's grandfather.
Wow.
Or St. Louis, either Chicago or St. Louis, somewhere, you know, I mix them all up, Midwest. Irving Harris, Marcia Melnick is saying, Irving Harris, that was his name.
Irving Harris, okay, great. So, Darina, talk to us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. This is one poem out of two that I wrote, inspired by Psalm 11. Neither of them is what I originally wanted to write, but my creative process is what it is. So just read it first. The tired old veteran's psalm of complaint, Eastern Europe to US. I'm a tired old veteran who has started all over again and again, work herself to exhaustion, a retired revolutionary, as some younger people say with at best condescension. When the very foundations have crumbled again, what are the tired to do? I'm no longer relevant. Those young people don't know who I am, and I don't know which battle to fight. Merely trying to choose brings me back to exhaustion, and I feel like an idiot where I'm struggling to cope with the rest of my life. When the very foundations have crumbled again, what are the tired to do?
Oh, Darina, this is fantastic. And I love the repetition of that line, which we see so much as the fulcrum to, and your reading of it, very profound. Would you talk to us a little bit?
Yes, this is essentially a poem about burnout and about being forced to admit that even my Eastern European resilience has its limits. When Donald Trump became your president, some Americans on my friends list on Facebook just broke down and never recovered. And I was terrified with their lack of resilience because we here are used to having our lives were destroyed again and again and starting all over again. But now I have to admit that even I have my limits. And sooner or later, even we Eastern Europeans get completely exhausted. And meanwhile, there are generational problems, the lack of continuity between activists.
Yeah.
I'm now learning to cope with this slowly, very slowly, but I have to constantly remember that I have to save my energy because I'm permanently tired.
Yeah. Well, we're so moved to have you as part of this class, and this perspective is really deep and really deep. And that being crushed and exhausted is a real human experience in the moment of time we're in. So you're inspiring us, and that means a lot to us. Keep writing, Darina. You're a fantastic, fantastic writer.
Paul Goodstein.
I'm here. Let me just find the poem on multiple devices at once.
Well, I have it on the screen if you want to just read it
Oh,
off the screen.
true. Okay. The foundations crumble. The forest is burning. The clouds themselves burning. Deer and coyote, fox and rabbit, all that can run must run. Rattler and salamander, snail and groundhog, all that can hide, retreat now. Buckeye, elm, walnut, redwood, pitch crackling. Flee, kein Schwalben seine mir nicht. The vultures rest anywhere a pile of bodies is found. Slight elevation, high enough ground to view the destruction. The lovers of havoc straighten their arms and arrows fill the air. Bend yourself, lean away from them. Even at the edge, there is always something to hold. Hold it.
Wow. Talk to us, Cole. Beautiful.
So many parts of the psalm and the different interpretations touched me, and I was just, the foundations crumbling really brought me right to the California fires and the world itself crumbling, burning. And I think also the image of fly away like a bird. And I had read about birds appearing singed in the areas around the fire, birds trying to leave, unable to leave. They're very sensitive to smoke also, and just thinking about all of the animals and where are they. The Schwalben is from Dona Dona. No, we're not swallows. We can't fly away. And the vultures were a misremembering of the story of Noah releasing a raven, I believe, or a crow prior to releasing the dove, but not trusting when the raven didn't come back, because ravens will, or crows will settle on corpses. And he didn't know if the world was full of corpses. So that was that image. And I was thinking about arrows, straight arrows, and bent as a term, at least for gay men, if not for lesbians, and wanted to celebrate our bentness.
Beautiful. So moving, and it's just so spectacular to see this range of response from the foundations being children in that foundational age to the foundations being the earth itself and nature. Just spectacular. It's hard not to feel completely heartbroken at those fires and the impact. Beautiful, Cole, just gorgeous. And I love with the very end, hold it.
So
really beautiful.
I think we should probably stop with the offerings there since we're at 10:43. What do you think, Rabbi?
I think so. And how many left do we have for 11, Harold?
Oh my gosh. We have more than, I think we have 10, at least 10 left.
Okay. All right. So Harold and I are going to have a little conference and figure out what's going to happen next week, and we'll let everybody know. Of course, class will be meeting. We're just not exactly sure what it will be, but we will be meeting. Just have some faith.
All right.
We have faith.
And just one little housekeeping thing for a second. Let's see. This picture, which you may be familiar with, is me and Annika. Right here. This is me, this is Annika, and this is all of your offerings. Coming in by email and text and word, and it's us trying to keep
So which
up
is
with.
you, Harold? Which is Annika? Hold on.
I think that I put a few in my mouth. Annika's a little better here.
Okay.
This is us as you send us something, and then you send us something that's been revised, and then you tell us you thought about it again. And doing our best. Annika too. Annika is a real hero here to keep everything straight and know which ones that we're supposed to put up on the screen. So please understand that we are trying to wrap your chocolates as fast as we can. And I would also ask, Annika and I are meeting next week. We have really been trying very hard to keep the archives of everyone's Psalms, the right version, the right, keep it straight. There was a question in the chat, how about the Psalm 10 offerings? There are things that have gone up on Facebook. So what I'll send this out in an email, but what I'd suggest that everybody who has done anything do is, please keep your own file, both digital and print, of what you have submitted, because we will, in the near future, be working to harmonize the archives that we have with everything that you've written. And if you can have that ready, that would be terrific. So with that little bit, and thank you for laughing the way I hoped you would, we will go back to Cantor Nimi.
Don't we need the I Love Lucy show now more than ever?
Oh my God, more than ever.
Oh my God.
Cantor Nimi and or Zerua.
Great. Thank you, Harold, both for the levity and for bringing the text up. So this is again Hebrew from Psalm 97 with the Gezerah Shava, with the overlapping phrase of the right-hearted, the upright of heart, and English lyrics by campers at the Goldman Union Camp Institute.
Raise our voices high. We must hold each other tight. We must stand up in the night and be alive. Spread our love around. We must feel this spiritual sound. We must work till peace has come. We must love and live as one and be alive.
Well, thank you, everybody. And the room will stay open for a few minutes, so if you want to stay and schmooze a little bit, feel free to. Just so moving. And I just want to end with one thing. The most powerful thing to do in response to when you hear or feel suffering in others, like in this class, we've been modeling it so beautifully, is to be a witness to somebody else's pain. We can't make things go away. But to know that we will be there and to be able to witness and to see it and to hold it and to love each other, that's profound. So I want to thank everybody for being willing to, through the Psalms, express depth that we can all feel and respond to, and have deep compassion for each other. We're all on a tough journey in life, and let's all always remember, I love Lucy. It's important to laugh.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I think I'm going to have to go do some YouTubing on I Love Lucy these days. That could really be helpful.
Yeah.
All of those old episodes are available, right? They must be somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Love to everybody. So the room will stay open for a few minutes. And Shabbat services tomorrow night, of course. And regular, and we have, I think it's Yoga Shabbat this week. Is that right? Or am I confused? No.
No, it's not. I'm reading, it's Shabbat Bereshit.
Shabbat Bereshit, that's right. We just went through the ritual calendar for the next month. So I'm have all the different.
I know, because I'm doing the very first reading of the very first Aliyah to start the reading off again this year.
Excellent. And I'm giving the drash tomorrow night about Bereshit in the beginning.
Okay. All right, everybody.
All right, everybody. Love to everybody. Be compassionate to everybody, including yourselves. Be compassionate to yourself. Bye-bye, everybody.